August marks your first year in office.
Yes.
How's it been?
Yeah, a few people have asked me this question, and it's been a difficult question to answer because on the one hand, it's gone really fast, and on the other hand, it's been very, very slow, taken a long time. I say that, it's like it's just only been yesterday that I joined, but at the same time, it feels like it's already been 10 years. So that's how it's been. It's a contradiction in some ways of things that have happened really fast. The time has moved really fast, but also there's so much that has happened, so much that it just feels like, 10 years has passed.
And what have been the biggest challenges over the past year?
Yeah, I think for me personally, as Vice-Chancellor coming into a new university, the biggest challenge is getting to know the place. So, of course, I've spent my career in academia. I understand the general framework and skeleton of academia, the university. But it's different when you come into a new university and one that is like UCT. So taking the time to be socialized into the nuances of UCT is something that should not be taken for granted. It requires a lot of time, a lot of patience, and it requires a lot of engagement with people. I think there's been quite a lot of work, effort, and I've been very intentional about it. But besides having to overcome that, I think it's been important for me to really take the time to just functionally know the institution, know the people, know what research people are doing, and kind of know what the different entities we have, what are their needs, what are their priorities. And at executive level, I think we've been dealing with the big problems like the financial situation of the university, big problems like polarization on campus, and big problems like leadership gap and governance, those kind of things. But yeah, they are not necessarily insurmountable. It's just that you have to go through it. You have to go through them. You can't go around them.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so the corollary then, what do you see as perhaps the major accomplishments over the past year?
Yeah, when I was arriving at UCT, in my mind, the biggest concern I had was that UCT was in a financial deficit position for 3 years, 22, 23, 24. And an institution like UCT should not operate with a negative balance sheet. It's just not possible because it's a top institution that has to be at the cutting edge. It must always have a little bit of reserves to try new things so that it can stay ahead. And obviously the first thing that I asked for, in as much as we were anticipating another deficit for 2025, the first thing I asked for was that we must go for a break-even budget, a cash neutral position, and start to crawl out of the hole and get rid of the deficit. And the budget that was approved for 2025 after all of those engagements was a break-even budget, which was the first battle won. And I think so far, a year into the role, we are on track to meet our budget objectives of doing away with the deficit for 2025. And for me, that will be a major accomplishment for UCT to come out of that phase of a budget deficit and start to build a more positive balance sheet and have the reserves to explore new areas going forward, and that our teams don't have to work under such difficult financial situation.
Are you glad you're here?
I think that the first year has demonstrated to me, including this case of having to deal with the budget deficit, that it's possible to do the impossible at UCT, and really what it takes is people putting their heads together, people holding hands together, and working together as a team to achieve it. And so in that sense, I think I'm very grateful. I don't know that I would have been able to achieve the same in another institution. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's hard work. It requires a lot of conversations and engagements. I'm amazed at how quickly we've been able to turn around what I see as the perception, reputation, and brand of UCT. When I was applying, the sentiment was that no one wants to go to UCT, especially at executive leadership level. And people were asking me, are you okay in your head? Are you sure you want to do this? But today, I think it's become relatively easier even for us to fill executive positions, and we are seeing a lot of people apply now. And it tells us something about the stability that the institution is in.
Okay. You mentioned that you came in and wanted to do some very intentional listening and
Yeah.
engaging with the various stakeholders.
Yes.
You've done so with staff, with
Yes.
faculty, with former VCs, with donors and students, of course, most importantly. What did you learn from those engagements?
Yeah. I think I would say that in the first year, probably listening is the thing that I did the most. I remember when we had my installation ceremony last year on the 25th of November. Just before that, I had finished my first 100 days, and we had over 100 stakeholder engagements. It was madness. And that was on top of everything that we had to do. But the institution has a reach beyond what one would consider affiliated stakeholders. These are
What do you think informs
non-affiliated.
that kind of attachment?
It was
to
so
UCT?
interesting to me. I mean, it's interesting to me because the thing that stood out for me was how UCT represents, it's like a symbol of hope. It's not just a place where you go and study per se. So even people that have not studied here, it still represents a symbol of hope for everyone. The way I explained it, it was almost like the Springbok team, So the Springboks, even if you don't know and follow rugby, somehow you recognize the role that they play in society as a symbol of hope for unity, symbol of hope for the country, for success. And so UCT represents something like that. And you only get to understand that when you start to engage with people. And in the role of Vice Chancellor, I have the privilege and opportunity that people tell me these things. And it's not just people in the country. This is across the globe.
So having undertaken then this wide-ranging stakeholder engagement and listening deeply and intently, in what ways has it informed your strategy, which you've recently unveiled?
What I've learned through these engagements is that the solutions to UCT's institutional culture challenges have to come from within UCT. They have to emerge out of UCT because they have to be very well aligned to the ethos of the institution. Diversity is the superpower of UCT. The superpower of UCT. But when I looked at the challenges, it was almost as if diversity has become the Achilles heel of UCT. So now, how do you turn your strength, what is meant to be your strength, and make it ends up becoming a weakness? And when you are there at the bottom, how do you grow out of that and turn it back into a strength? There is an appetite in different structures where I've engaged people, strong appetite for UCT to overcome the polarization that is on campus. And that appetite we have to capitalize on. I know that shifting institutional culture is something that takes time. It's not something you can do overnight. But I think that I'm quite optimistic that there is enough critical mass of people who understand that we are here to unleash potential. We are here to unlock talent. We are here to help every single person explore and discover the best version of themselves.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, what kind of leadership then, or leadership attributes or style, does such a moment require, or has it demanded of you to overcome that polarity that you came into?
That is such an interesting question. I think, when I was interviewed, I was asked the question of what my leadership style is. And usually people will talk about all this servant leadership and this and that. But for me, really, I felt strongly, and I still do feel strongly about the importance of putting people in the center, especially in a university. A university, your asset is your people. Your people are their brains and their hearts and their motivations and their hard work. That's how you produce knowledge. That's how you teach. That's what you nurture. The essence of a university is people. But we sometimes fall in the trap of focusing a lot on processes and systems. And these things are important in an ecosystem. You need all the parts. But at the center of it, it's people. And when you center people, you also realized how important values are, especially shared values. The world is in turmoil. It's not just at UCT, it's a lot of things around us. And at this moment in time, we have to go an extra mile in making sure that we are protecting each other, from the world and even from ourselves.
Wonderful. I'd like us to delve a little bit into Strategy 2030, if you will. You've recently unveiled this on the 1st of August. It says here that the vision and purpose remains the same. And I quote, to unleash human potential for a fair and just society.
Yes.
In practice, what does this mean?
It is so interesting you asked this. Yesterday I was attending an inaugural lecture by one of our professors in Chad. She is part of the writing center, and she was explaining that we get students from different communities. They come to UCT, they speak different languages, and they must come and write in English. One way of approaching it is to decide what the standard is, to say that when students write, regardless of their backgrounds, there's a right way and a wrong way of doing it. So she says, that's not what we should be doing. She says that we should allow students to write, and whatever they write, we must try to understand it from their perspective and look for the assets in what they've written, in the way that they've written. She says, even if the students had to put forward their first initial thoughts in their own mother tongue, that should be okay.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, writing is so important for everyone to feel comfortable in it, because there is power in writing. In one way, when someone writes and writes well, they can influence the world. And that's what we do with science. We write and we influence the world this way. We make a difference this way. But most importantly, in the process of writing, there is inequality. People are not equal. But if you then allow and support students to navigate and experience writing in ways that provide fairness, regardless of the diversity of their backgrounds, that for me is a process of unleashing potential for a fair and a just society in what we do, in the process of the way we train students in writing. I mean, I was blown away. I listened to that and I was like, actually, what you've just done is demonstrate what we mean by unleashing potential for a fair and a just society, just in your process. I'm sure the students will pass and grow to go have big impact in society later on. But just in that process, for me, there was a much deeper meaning in the process that the professor was following.
So one of the pillars that you are now going to be focused on, that you've introduced as the missions of this new statement, is around innovation and entrepreneurship. Why did you think that this is important right now?
I was challenged. By a lot of some of the things that happened during our engagements. As a university, we are a bedrock of talent. We value excellence, academic excellence. We can demonstrate our accomplishments in terms of the students and learners that we train. Many of them, they graduate to go into wonderful jobs and opportunities. Our research has impact in the world, and it's one of the reasons why we are ranked the way that we are. But I was challenged in terms of the question of in what way are we contributing to society? In one conversation we had with government officials, even though the statement was harsh, it did get me to reflect, and they said to us that we lack societal legitimacy. And they were just speaking to universities in general as a sector. And I would have thought that just by doing what we do, that should give us enough legitimacy in society. And I'm sure it does. But the statement was important because instead of being defensive, what I decided to do was to reflect on it and reflect on it with my team. And we came to the conclusion that at the heart of gaining societal legitimacy for an institution that holds so much talent, for an institution that can claim to be the brain trust of the country, we need to be the first ones, the first responders when society is faced with challenges. So if society says we've got a load shedding problem, we need to unleash our brain trust to help solve those problems. When society says that we've got a flooding problem or a drought problem, we need to unleash our brain trust to help solve those. Not that we will do it on our own, but we can contribute based on the talent and the expertise that we hold. And that way, whenever society has to have a conversation, they would always want us to be present at the table. And at the moment, those conversations can happen without us. And we have to get to a point where those conversations do not happen without us. So we have to adopt these models so that we can participate actively in addressing our pressing challenges with innovation, with entrepreneurship, with inventions, all of these things, while we still do what we have been so good at doing, teaching young people, doing research at a level that we do it, and engaging in terms of community engagements and things that we've been doing. But for me, I think we're entering a different phase in the 21st century where universities have to be vehicles for addressing pressing urgent problems.
So related to the question around innovation, I read an article recently which was looking at AI and knowledge generation, and which suggested in global rankings that China is in the lead, tracked below that by the US and the EU somewhere down below. Africa doesn't register there at all.
Yes.
And what is the place of universities in that? Because this is certainly a revolutionary, and we need to be part of that solution and asking the right questions and generating knowledge.
Yeah. So I think I can say that any university that's involved in science and technology somehow is involved in some level of AI and machine learning research, most likely. Varying degrees, of course. But I think what we are seeing is countries like China and other places that are leading in this field, they are not just engaged in small-scale research. They are engaged in answering big questions around AI, around machine learning, and the future, really. And this is where we come short in our universities on the continent, because our research is informed by small-scale research projects that are funded. We don't ask very big questions. And asking big questions means that you have to ask them together with other universities. So you bring experts together into a consortium. You also have to ask them together with government, because they have to speak directly to policy and be future oriented. You must ask them together with the private sector and industry. You must ask them together with civil society. Brings us back to this notion of quadruple helix, because what you're really asking is questions about society as a whole, a societal question. And you need the participation of all the stakeholders. China has been very good at this. They have been very good at leveraging the government resources, state-owned companies and industry, private sector industry, universities together. They are a well-oiled machine when it comes to innovation for this reason. And that's why they have leaped forward so quickly. India is also very close. Brazil is quite close as well. But I think in Africa, we are still behind. We still have difficult relationships with government. We still don't trust the private sector. They also feel like we are not responsive. The same notion of ivory towers still exist. But I can tell you that if we don't change that now, we are going to be left behind even further. When it comes to AI, all the different key stakeholders on the continent have to make a decision to say, Africa is not going to be left behind when it comes to technological advancement. We have to make that decision. And it is the principle that we are following in our new AI institute at UCT to say that we want to make sure that the divide between Africa and the world is reduced.
You touched on the issue of financial sustainability earlier, and we've seen what's happened in the US with the defunding and the ripple effects, I suppose, for research and development in our own universities. What levers are you hoping to pull to bridge that gap in the current climate?
Yeah, I think the first lever that we've been hoping to pull and really use has been firstly diplomacy. We are hoping that the diplomatic engagements between South Africa and the US can yield some results in a world that is so divided and fractured and polarized. Academic diplomacy becomes really important. We have to step out of our comfort zone and start engaging in diplomacy ourselves as academics, as universities. And this is something that I think is difficult for us in universities because naturally we shy away from politics. We count on academic freedom and institutional autonomy to stay out of politics. But in this case of the US funding cuts, we found ourselves bang in the middle of politics. So now we must step out of the comfort zone to engage in processes and conversations to navigate that political climate. There's a saying that when the world is at war, science is not. And there's a reason for that. It's the fact that in all of this, they can cut our funding for research, but university partners and academics will remain in partnership regardless of what's going on. Because of the very same culture of academic freedom and autonomy, it protects us as universities to maintain those channels and partnerships when things are hard politically and otherwise. And this is the time for universities to step forward and play their part in making sure that they are a bridge and in holding the world together. The next lever really for us is domestic funding. Domestic funding from government is important, but our budget is tight. It's not like there's a lot of money lying around, but our government invests only 0.61% of GDP in R&D, research and development. And the policy says that our government should be investing 1.5% of GDP.
And this has been lamented for a while. It
Exactly.
doesn't appear to change.
But, as universities, we've always bridged that gap with foreign funding. Now, with governments shutting down, closing down, becoming more focusing more on national issues and national investments and disinvesting globally, it's time for our government to pick that up and actually start to increase it. For me, even if we were to just reach 1%, it would contribute a lot. I really hope that we can come close to 1.5% in the coming years. But this is something that we have to do in South Africa. And we're going to have to agitate to make sure that that happens. I know we've got many needs, but if we don't invest in R&D, in research and development, we're not going to innovate. We're not going to see progress in this country. We're not going to be prepared for the future. And innovation is what we use to solve our problems.
I imagine that at this stage, you are about to embark on an exercise to socialize your new strategy with the various constituencies within the broader UCT community and externally. what are the aspects that you would want each particular stakeholder group, say the students or staff, to embody in the strategy? What do you want them to champion?
For me, when we set out to develop this strategy, one thing that I kept thinking about was that I want every person to see themselves in the strategy. We have to get past a situation where, when we talk about the future of the institution, it's for some people and it's not for everyone. And balancing the interests for a diverse community is difficult. But if we keep leaving certain people behind, then we are holding the institution back. The strategy 2030 is a 5-year strategy that is built on Vision 2030. But really what we are building for the long term, because we've already started conversations about where we see UCT in 2050. And in 2050, many of us will not be here at UCT. But we are building a legacy for future generations. And if there are young people that do not see themselves in this strategy, then what legacy are we building for them? Because people that are in first year today, in 25 years' time, they will be the people leading this institution and running this institution. So they have to be part of the process of laying all these foundations and layers and bricks that form what UCT is going to look like in the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You touched on the importance of people, and UCT is its people, it says. But governance is also important. Processes are important. Policies are important. That's also a key priority that you've identified. How are you seeking to bolster those?
So I think that if you think about it, management is about doing things right, and leadership is about doing the right things. Making those strategic choices are not easy. And so as part of the process of strategic development and implementation, it's about making the choices, the right choices from a leadership perspective. And when we implement them, implementing them the right way through stronger management. And there's a lot of work we have to do, including socializing people at UCT to focus a lot more on people and values and not just processes, even when we want to do the things the right way. But on governance, I think it is my own view that governance at UCT is a chronic problem. It doesn't start today. It doesn't start in the last few years. It's been, weaknesses in governance have been there for a long time. And I actually think, or my observation, comparing it to other places where I've been, I think it's also inherent in the system that we have built at UCT. And so we're going to have to do a lot of work in terms of committing to good governance, everybody. It's very different when you navigate UCT thinking about what's just of interest to you, compared to when you are navigating it thinking what's in the best interest of UCT. Those things should normally be aligned. But if it happens that there isn't alignment, then you can end up putting the institution at risk. It's one of the reasons why we are very intentional in getting people to think about UCT in 2050, because most of us that are leading now, whatever we design for 2050 is not going to benefit us personally. So it forces us to think about what's in the best interest of the institution as a whole.
What message would you want to leave current and prospective students with at this juncture?
I think that the students of the University of Cape Town, we know that they are selected on the basis of merit, and they are brilliant, and they are gifted, they are talented. In many ways, their future is already bright. But I think what I've seen in the past year is that either for financial reasons or academic reasons, students who are gifted and talented can end up not having as successful a journey and as enjoyable a journey through UCT. And I, as Vice-Chancellor, I would like to see a situation where our students are not robbed of their destiny of success and accomplishment and impact in society, where society can benefit from what they have to offer because of the difficulties of the journeys that they have to face. And I would like students to know that when they're struggling, it's okay to ask for help. You know, it happens to all of us. So at some point, no matter how gifted, hardworking, at some point you have a difficult time. And I really hope that students can help them in those times of needs.
Prof, thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful chatting to you, and all the best. And I hope you do find time eventually to make the most of our wonderful city.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.